Oh, hello friends. Just doing a little light reading. So we're back for another video about videos and what to do about making videos and whatnot. So today I thought we'd talk about white balance. So what is white balance? White balance is balancing the color temperature of an image. So what's color temperature? Color temperature is the description of warmth or coolness within a light source. So what does all that mean? So light sources give off different colors depending on their Kelvin level. So what's a Kelvin? A Kelvin is a measurement of thermodynamic temperature. Or in layman's terms, if a light source is giving off a lower Kelvin temperature or degree, that means the light is going to have a warmer or kind of an orange tint to it. And on the other hand, if a light source has a higher Kelvin level, that means it's going to give off a cooler or more of a blue tint. So now you're probably asking, what the heck does this have to do with videos? Well, it actually has to do a lot with videos and with photography as well. So depending on your light situation or your light source or setup or whatever, the temperature of a light can really change the image of what you're shooting. So for example, if you have a light source that has a much lower Kelvin temperature, your image is going to end up being just kind of orange or yellowish and have a different tint to it, and it's going to mess with skin tones a little bit as well on your subject. And then obviously on the other hand, if your light source has a much higher Kelvin temperature, it's going to give off a more blue tint, and again, it's going to mess with skin tones a little bit with your subject. This also becomes a big deal if you're shooting outside and you're not in an environment where you can have a lot of controlled lighting. So for example, when you're outside, what is the number one source of light? The sun, duh, the big fire thing in the sky, yeah. So if you didn't know this, the sun actually changes colors throughout the day. So at sunrise and sunset, it has a much lower Kelvin temperature, and that's why sunrises and sunsets kind of have the more orange and red and sometimes even purple hue to them. And then throughout the day up until noon, it gets bluer and bluer, and then around noon, it's kind of like this white color. The sun turns into more of a white color at noon, and then as it goes down again, it becomes warmer and becomes more orange as it goes down and it sets, and then it turns dark and the moon comes up and all that. So you're probably asking yourself, how do we fix this? How do we change this terrible thing that happens? So the easiest way to do it would be if you were inside and you had a light setup with LED lights where you had adjustable color temperatures on the lights themselves. So with that, Kelvins are measured basically from 1000 degrees Kelvin to 10,000 degrees Kelvin. 1000 degree Kelvin would be kind of the color of a candle, where it's kind of red and orange, and then as you go up the chart through the Kelvin levels or temperatures, it'll turn more orange into kind of a yellow into a white, and then the tint starts to turn blue as you get higher and the Kelvins get cooler at 10,000 degrees. Another method in order to correct your color temperature if you were inside again would be to use gels, or actually switch out the bulbs of the light if you had different colored light bulbs. So again, if you did not know this, all light bulbs come with a Kelvin temperature on them. So if you go inside somewhere, you may notice some light bulbs are a little bit more white or have a bluish tint, or some of them may have a yellow or more orange tint, just depending on who bought the light bulbs and what Kelvin temperature they wanted them to be. So again, with that, let's say you didn't have a lighting setup where you were able to adjust the Kelvins with LED lights or something like that, you could have a set of different colored light bulbs that you can just take them out and swap them in if need be, or you can have something on hand called gels. And gels are these colored kind of plastic sheets that you can put over lights in order to change the color. They are much easier to use on LED lights. If you have halogen lights, obviously those get a lot hotter, and so you actually could melt or warp the plastic of the gel. But again, you can either grab an orange one or a blue one and try to correct the lighting just using those themselves. Another way to correct this is to use the white balance within the camera. So all cameras actually have a setting called white balance, and basically what it's going to do is within the camera itself will try to correct the white balance depending on what the lighting situation is and the color temperature is of what you're shooting. So there's kind of two ways to go about it. One of them is most cameras have what's called auto white balance, where the camera will actually adjust the white balance for you. There's some pros and cons to that. The pros are obviously it's easy to use and you don't need to worry about the white balance. It was just on auto because it's constantly adjusting the white balance depending on what the color is coming through the camera. But the downside to that is if you're moving a lot and let's say you go into a room where the lighting changes drastically and the color temperature changes drastically, you'll actually see a shift in the color of the image a little bit. So another way to go about that is to actually adjust the white balance yourself. And the way you go about that is so again, every camera has a white balance setting. And what you do is you try to find something pretty white. You can grab a sheet of paper or maybe there's a white wall or something, but the best thing to do is actually to get what's called a white balance card, and it'll have white on one side and gray on the other side. And depending on, again, the lighting in the room, you either use the gray or the white side in order to capture the correct color balance. So what you do, we'll just use this paper for example, you hold it up to the lens, you hit the button, and the camera should take a picture of the white in the room, and then it will correct its temperature depending on how white this comes out to be. So again, it's kind of confusing, but I'll try to make this a little bit more simpler. If you're in a room where there was a lot of orange tint lights, if you hold a piece of paper up, it's gonna look kind of orange, or blue on the other hand, it's gonna look blue. So what the camera does is it notices that that's white, or it knows that it's white since you're holding it up. And when you take the picture, it will change the blue or orange tinted white paper into what true white is. And then when you hold the paper down, your subject or image or whatever you're shooting should be at the right color temperature, since the camera now corrected what the color temperature was. So that is probably the best way to go about it when using color temperature within the camera, because it'll just be the closest way to be able to get to what the true white or true color should be within the room. Another way to do it is in post-production. You can adjust color temperatures through post-production, but again, you don't want to leave things like that into post-production. You want to be able to adjust the white balance as good as you can while you're shooting, and then just use it as like a super backup or last resort or something like that. So yeah, that's basically it for white balance. It's kind of simple, just a little trick to know, but it is pretty critical when it comes to your final product of what you're shooting. There's been many times where I've gone and filmed something, and then when I go look at the footage, I'm like, why the heck does this look orange, or why is this all blue? It has to do with color temperature. It's something you should know, you should get familiar with. It is, I guess in the grand scheme of camera things, something that sort of flies under the radar when you're a beginner. But as you get better and you start noticing things and whatnot and just getting more familiar with your equipment, it's definitely something you need to be aware about and be able to know how to notice it and correct it once you're either on set, or obviously if you forget, you can do it in post as well. So that's gonna do it for this week. Yeah, it's good seeing you all again. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. More camera information on the way. It's gonna be great. I'm looking forward to it. Peace. I'll see you guys later.